today's podcast is with a coffee and caffeine expert. I've been wanting to make this conversation happen for a long time because everything that we've heard about caffeine and coffee to some degree has been very misleading. And there's a lot of scaremongering out there, and it absolutely can have microtoxins in and be destroying our sleep. But there's a whole other side of the coin when it comes to coffee, where it's actually a superfood. And Alex will explain in detail how this is possible, what are all the amazing benefits, how it can help us prevent Alzheimer's, heart disease, it can help play a role in blood pressure, and so many other things. So everything that you've heard about coffee, park that to one side, get your cup of joe, sit back and relax and enjoy this conversation with Alex from Exhale Coffee. Cheers.
Everyone thinks of coffee as caffeine. Everyone thinks of it as fight or flight. Everyone thinks of it as activating your sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, the inhale, perhaps. And actually exhale. So we're, as a business, we're trying to introduce people to a different side of coffee, the more parasympathetic side, the healthier side of coffee, which actually is the exhale because it stimulates parasympathetic nervous system. So it kind of fit quite well.
Okay, so I know almost zero about coffee. I went on a coffee tour in Costa Rica a couple of years ago. So I learned a little bit about caffeine levels and stuff. So you've just blown my mind. So please explain that because I've never heard that before. So how, because I always thought the same thing, coffee's stressing you out. We're over caffeinated as a nation. It's messing up our sleep. So just explain to me the other side of that coin.
Yeah, so, I mean, the first thing for me to say is that my favorite phrase is coffee's not bad for us, we're bad for coffee. So coffee starts its life as this innocent fruit that grows on a tree. Okay, it's in a cherry on a tree, and that cherry goes through every color of the rainbow as it ripens. So it starts its life as a fruit, but then we put it through loads of different processes. We over roast it, dark roast it until it's lost most of its healthy compounds, its natural fruity goodness, and then we get the cup of coffee, which is already devoid of most of the good, healthy compounds that can be in coffee. Then we drink it. We make it really quick. We have like an instant coffee or a pod or make a quick cup of coffee, neck it back, and then race out the door in a state of high stress, get on the tube, go to work. And then we have energy crashes and feel anxious and we blame the coffee. But actually, it's actually not the fault of the coffee. The coffee, it's how we process the coffee. And then it's the relationship we've developed with coffee and caffeine over the years. But caffeine is a psychoactive drug, so it needs to be treated with respect. So
Okay, that's interesting. So how are you different then with your coffee from like other brands? Like why is yours like healthier? What's going on?
So all coffee has a load of compounds in it which have health benefits. So polyphenols are the main ones. Polyphenols have really potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects in the body. That's in all coffee, but the amount you get in coffee is massively variable. So there's a study, for example, which tested 104 different coffees bought in cafes, and they found that the range from 6 milligrams to 188 milligrams per cup, 6 to 188. So 31 times difference in the lowest and the highest. You have no idea what you're drinking. So we basically tested coffees from around the world to find a coffee that was naturally highest in polyphenols. Okay, we would have taken a coffee from anywhere on the planet, any plantation. Then we took that coffee to the roastery, roasted it loads of different ways because how you roast it has a big impact. And then we found the best way of roasting the coffee to retain as much of these healthy compounds as possible. And then we basically have brewed it loads of different ways, tested how to brew it, and we give as much advice as possible. Shy of going to our customers' houses and brewing the coffee for them, we try and give them as much advice as possible on how to brew the coffee to get the most health benefits. So it's the sourcing, the roasting, and then the brewing, 3 broad stages.
Yeah. What are polyphenols? I've heard the word, but I wouldn't be able to explain it to anyone.
Yeah, they're plant-based phytochemicals. So basically all fruits and vegetables have polyphenols in. Basically, people know, everyone's heard of vitamins and minerals as being good for you, and that fruits and vegetables are healthy because they have vitamins and minerals in. Well, fruits and veggies also have a lot of polyphenols in, and people haven't really heard of them before 5 to 10 years ago, but suddenly they're in the press a lot because they have a lot of health benefits of their own. So yeah, they're everywhere in fruits and vegetables, but coffee is weirdly your diet's richest source of them, which nobody knows. So
And what do they do? So if I've got little polyphenols and you've got a lot of polyphenols, what's the benefit of me jacking up on polyphenols?
so there's loads of research around different benefits of polyphenols. The link to like reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, reduced risk of Alzheimer's and dementia, and all these kind of things. But I mean, the mechanisms at play is the really potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects in the body. So, low-level inflammation in the body has been linked to most major diseases. So, if you consume more polyphenols, the anti-inflammatory effects of the polyphenols will help put out the fires of the inflammation in your body, basically.
Okay.
But yeah, and they reckon you need to consume. So there's dozens of studies. I've written loads of blogs on our website about this. They reckon you need to consume between 1 grams and 2 grams of polyphenols a day to get the health benefits, like the optimum to aim for. And 3 cups of our coffee a day will give you about a gram or more. So about 50% of your target can come from coffee alone.
Okay. Yeah, I really don't know. I need to look into that clearly because again, you hear the word on these biohacking podcasts, but I need more. It doesn't red wine have polyphenols in?
Red wine does have a decent amount of polyphenols.
Yeah, that's probably what I've heard about it. Yeah, my dad would mention it.
Yeah, no, it does, but also things like dark leafy green vegetables,
Okay.
any berries, nuts and seeds, these kind of things.
Okay. Cool. So if we talk about caffeine a little bit then, because I know a little bit about caffeine, I'd love to, because I know you've got a decaf version. So can you just there's myths I've heard, like there's different ways to decaf coffee. It's never caffeine free. There's always just a reduced amount of caffeine is what I've understood. And some people use acid and then you end up drinking the acid and there's a different healthy way of doing it. Can you demystify that a little bit? Hey, just pausing the podcast for a second to talk about daylight lenses, which are incredible for energy and focus. Now, you wouldn't do breath work in a smoke-filled room, but we do the visual equivalent all day long, sitting under harsh blue lights that wreck our eyes, crush our energy, and leave us foggy. And raw optics daylight lenses, they're like a breath of fresh air for your brain. Daylight lenses filter out damaging wavelengths of blue light from screens and artificial lights, while keeping the colours natural and the vision is sharp. And the results? More clarity, more calm, less strain. I wear these during the day when I'm on my computer or my phone, and they've become essential in my daily routine. Use TADB code 10 at rawoptics.com for 10% off. That's TADB 10 for 10% off. Try them and you will notice a difference. Cheers. Let's get back on with the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I was chatting to someone on the beach about this morning, actually. So there's traditional ways to decaf coffee. There's 2 chemicals which are used predominantly. One's methylene chloride and one's ethyl acetate. Now, those chemicals are used in all sorts of industrial processes, or they were. So methylene chloride is the main one, and that was used in paint stripper. So painters and decorators using methylene chloride in their paint stripper. But so many deaths have been attributed to them inhaling the fumes of methylene chloride that it's actually been banned from all industrial uses. And the only place it's still legal to use methylene chloride is to decaffeinate coffee. So in America, there's massive petitions, and the Environmental Protection Agency are involved. There's a company called the Clean Label Project petitioning as well, to basically try and get it banned, or at least make sure that all coffees that are decaf need to list how they're decaffeinated on the packet, because you really don't want to be drinking decaf that's been decaffeinated with methylene chloride. So but then the better version is water-based process. So Swiss water is the famous one, but we use the mountain water process, which uses only pure glacial water from the highest mountain in Mexico and nothing else. But the issue is there's just not enough plants to decaffeinate the whole of the global supply or demand of decaf coffee using these water-based processes. So if they made methylene chloride illegal, what would Starbucks do? What would all these big chains do? They can't suddenly go to these small Swiss water plants and say, can you decaffeinate our coffee? So it's a bit of an issue.
Okay. So is there any evidence that the decaf coffee done in the dangerous way actually links to any problems in humans? Have you seen anything there? Or they saying actually, no, it is actually safe once we've gone through the process?
So, I mean, the official stance and why it is legal is that it's safe, but
Mhm.
I mean, certainly there's the people petitioning against it think it's not safe. So,
Okay.
no. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a fine line. Do
Sure.
you
Interesting.
want to run the risk? Is the question.
Interesting. Okay. And I'm guessing you can't tell. I mean, obviously you guys are doing it a certain way, but I don't, does it say on the back of a general packet of coffee which way it's been decaffeinated?
No, so it doesn't say. But the Clean Label Project have a database now on their website where you can go and look up a company and it'll tell you
Mm,
what they use. And then in an ideal world, everyone would say if it doesn't say, assume it's a chemical one, because if it was a water one, it costs us a lot more to buy a water-based decaffeinated product.
mhm.
So we're going to shout about it. So if someone's not doing that and using the chemicals, then it won't say on the label.
That's really helpful.
Right.
A little bit. I know you guys are bean based. I'd love to know like what you know about like instant coffee, because I read a book last year called Ultra Processed Foods. And if you've come across this book, amazing and scary and horrible and all the crap that's in our food. So I'm just wondering, like, is instant coffee, like, is that classed as a UPF? What's in it? Is it just literally dried coffee smashed up into little bits? What can you tell me about what goes into that process and what is instant coffee?
Yeah, so instant coffee is freeze dried coffee beans. And I've written a blog on this on our website, and we are soon to actually release some ads talking about this. But yeah, basically coffee is processed. It goes through processes, but
Mhm.
instant coffee I would definitely class as ultra processed. It's There's the research on it isn't great. So on average, it contains 4 times the amount of mycotoxins as regular coffee. On average, it contains over double the amount of acrylamide as regular coffee.
What's
And also, acrylamide is like this neurotoxin carcinogenic compound in coffee. That's in lots of food.
okay?
But you know, um, but it's also been linked to there's read the blog on our website. But there's a handful of studies which are emerging, which have actually separated out fresh roasted coffee from instant coffee. So most studies in the past have just gone, coffee is coffee. Do you drink coffee? Yes. Then they've made associations based on that. But there's a handful of studies now which have split out fresh roasted coffee and instant coffee. And whereas fresh roasted coffee reduces the risk of things like type 2 diabetes, they're actually seeing that instant coffee can increase the risk of certain things. So yeah, I don't like kind of quoting too many things because there's not loads of research to
Sure.
prove that, but early signs are it's not great.
Ah, it's another rabbit hole, because we're just going down the Teflon rabbit hole at the minute, and we had an air fryer that was bought for us for our wedding. Then I just looked into like how bad that is, and it's like circulating Teflon in the air. So we're deep down the biohacking rabbit hole, but then things just sneak in. And so my wife ironically drinks decaf instant coffee to be healthier.
Oh my god, yeah. Well,
Actually, it's probably the worst. Yeah.
that's the issue with the whole decaffeination process. Like most people who switch to decaf do it to be healthier, and probably the biggest consumer of decaf coffee is pregnant women.
Yeah.
They move to decaf because they have to, but actually, they're actually probably exposing themselves to way worse toxins by
So
doing so.
bad. That's why she's on it. She got pregnant 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We've got a 2-year-old son now. Straight away, I need instant decaf coffee, and it's good. This has already been like very, very valuable to know. So okay, so we need to be
General rule, I'd say with anything across life, just stick to the closest
yeah.
thing, the natural version of it that you can, whatever food it is or whatever you're doing in life. You can get carried away with all sorts of fancy biohacks, but ultimately it's the natural free ones that are going to have the biggest impact on your life. So
Yes. That's exactly where we are here. It's like breathe through your nose, breathe gently, breathe softly. You don't need loads of gadgets. You actually just need to breathe properly, and you'll get all the benefits from that. And that's often the case, like touching your feet against the floor or in the sea, all these things, getting daylight on your skin. It really does come back to basics. We've made things very complicated.
we overcomplicate things. Because we want to spend money on something to solve our problems. We won't actually put the time and the effort into solving them ourselves. But actually, all the tools are at our fingertips, and most of them are free. Most of the best ones are free. So
Yeah, good. caffeine then. This is a minefield, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So, um, are you familiar with Andrew Huberman's work? You ever come across the Andrew Huberman podcast? Yeah, okay. He does a whole thing on sleep and different things. And I'm gonna maybe misquote a little bit here, but my understanding is what they call the adenosine system doesn't kick in for 2 hours. And so it's pointless having coffee in the first 2 hours. But subjectively, if I'm up for an hour or 30 minutes and I have a coffee, I feel great. I feel like it's kicking in a little bit. I feel a little bit of a buzz. So something's working on that. So what are your thoughts on like time appropriate caffeine first thing in the morning?
Yeah, so his big thing was that's been that's been popularized, and lots of influencers love shouting about it, was that you shouldn't drink coffee within the first 90 minutes of waking, because when you wake up, there's a natural cortisol spike that kind of wakes you up in the morning. If you drink coffee, you can have another cortisol spike. So actually, if you're drinking coffee, giving you a spike on top of another spike, then you're more likely to crash from a higher place an hour or two after waking up. So to avoid that cortisol crash, basically.
Mhm.
However, pretty soon after Huberman came out and said that, that was then disproven in a study, in an actual study that was published and fully researched, which basically said that if you use that argument, then you wouldn't exercise in the morning. But we know that exercising in the morning is the best time to exercise, but exercise causes a cortisol spike. So if that theory was true, you wouldn't do anything in the morning that could like cortisol. But actually, yeah, the morning is the best time to exercise. Also, habituated coffee drinkers don't all get a cortisol spike. So most people who drink coffee every day will be habituated to it and will have no impact from the caffeine at all, no negative impact. And I know when I drink a cup of coffee, I feel nothing and I don't have a cortisol spike. So it really doesn't matter what time I drink the coffee in the morning, cortisol related. So most habituated coffee drinkers don't have to worry about that.
That makes sense. It's like, I guess not a great analogy, but if like if you drink or you smoke or something, your impact is going to feel different to me if I've not never drank or smoked, right? So we just we adjust to those things. That makes sense. But again, I'm sure there's a healthier analogy than that. Okay, so it's okay to wake up, have some water, then have your first coffee. If that's what you do, you don't start freaking out about having that first.
That's your thing, if that fits your lifestyle,
Yeah.
then definitely. I would say it's probably good practice to drink like a pint of water first when you wake up and give yourself like half an hour. But I wouldn't obsess over it if your life doesn't allow it.
Yeah. Yeah. I try and have some salty water or something first thing, or some, some supplement, whatever they're called, Elementin, all these different ones at the minute. So I'll have some salty water, and then about 45 minutes later, we'll normally have the first coffee, something like that. And
Yeah, I get it. I give it about, I mean, to be honest, I wake up 2 hours before the rest of the house wake up. And if I start grinding and brewing coffee, then I live in a small flat, I wake the house up. So I actually don't have my first coffee until about 2 hours after waking up or more. But that pint of water with electrolytes in the morning, but you don't need some fancy electrolytes, which are going to cost like £1 to £2 per day. I just buy a tub of electrolytes, which work out at like 3 or 4p per day.
oh, nice. Okay.
So just you just don't overthink the electrolytes. Don't waste money on fancy ones.
Nice. I'll check, because the guy that runs the Health Summit, Tim Gray, he came on this podcast a couple of years ago, and he was saying get Celtic sea salt, which has got one of the highest mineral concentrations out of all the salts. So we normally would have a little bit of that. I got seduced by some of these, not pharmaceuticals, but some of these big supplement companies that are selling these sexy hydration sachets. But a lot of them got like sweeteners in and different things, and they're not very pure.
You just do not need it. All these things out there that are just a complete waste of money, like honestly. And to be honest, like the salt thing is good, but again, it doesn't need to be Celtic sea salt. Like I live in the Algarve in Portugal, and we have amazing local salts, and I just love buying. I just love testing out different salts from different areas of the Algarve, and no one's going to tell me that that's worse for me than Celtic or Redmond sea salt, which is also very on trend. So
Yeah. What's it called, that one?
Redmond sea salt is very on trend, but but I know people here who buy it in from America, and you're like, there's some amazing salts on your doorstep. So
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Cool. So you just mentioned grinding, so I'm getting a proper coffee masterclass from you here. So I normally grind like a week's worth of coffee in one go. Are you going to say you're better off grinding each morning fresh coffee beans? What's the benefits?
I am. You know, ideally, you'd definitely be grinding fresh every time. So, real coffee aficionados would say that within 3 or 4 minutes of grinding the coffee, it's lost a lot of the nuances of the flavor already. So, so taste wise, you definitely want to be grinding fresh. But for for the health benefits of coffee, coffee is at its healthiest when it's freshly roasted. And then as soon as coffee is roasted, its healthy compounds, its polyphenols start degrading fairly slowly, but they do start degrading. And then as soon as you grind coffee, the surface area of the coffee is massively increased because ground coffee, the particles are tiny. It's massively increased. So that accelerates the degrading of the healthy compounds in coffee. So if you keep beans and drink them as freshly roasted as possible, you're going to be retaining much more of the healthy compounds than if you
Okay.
buy ground coffee. So just don't buy ground coffee. If
Okay. And if you're going to grind it in the morning before you make
grind
it.
it morning, yeah, I like the smell of freshly ground coffee. Like surely, there's a
Yeah, yeah.
difference.
Nice. Okay. So we have one of those little Italian coffee makers. I don't know what you call them. Cafetiere, is it? Where you put the water in the bottom, put the filter thing on top, screw it, and you boil it through. Yeah, old school. What's the best way of making a fresh coffee in the morning? Is it that? Because I heard that the French press, they have a lot more caffeine in because it's kind of sitting in the water for longer. There's the people with the AeroPress, but I think you're pumping like hot liquid through plastic, which makes me a bit nervous. So, like, what's the best way of making a coffee?
I'll give you the geeky answer. We did loads of lab testing on different brew methods and different types of recipes with different brew methods. And actually, the best way is using a steel dripper. So a steel filter dripper that sits on top of the cup, and a steel one, so not a paper one. Because you can use a fine ground coffee in the steel dripper. Basically, we tested them all: a cafetiere, an AeroPress, espresso, mocha pot. They all extract about 20 milligrams of polyphenols per gram of coffee, but steel dripper extracts 24 milligrams. So it's like 20% more. So 10 to 20% more polyphenols extracted using the steel dripper, which I think is because you can use a really fine ground coffee in the steel dripper. Plus it has like 2.5 minutes of steep time. So
Mm.
that is actually the winner. Although, if you're drinking a coffee that's naturally high in polyphenols, like Exhale is, I wouldn't sweat it too much because, just whatever works for you. Like we drink cafetiere coffee, 90% of our cups of coffee is from a cafetiere because I'm making it for multiple people. So it's just way. I wouldn't want to stand and make a dripper for like 4 people, but
Okay.
you're in a cafetiere.
So the dripper literally is, and does it have a paper filter in, or is it literally just goes the coffee goes directly into the metal?
Directly into the metal. So the other thing about using paper filters is two of the healthiest compounds in coffee are called caffeine and carbiol, and they're two diterpenes, and they've been linked to loads of things. Like they're really reducing the risk of leukemia and yeah, you can. There's a whole load of things that they've been linked to, and they're dissolved in the fats. They're fat soluble, so they're dissolved in the lipids in coffee. So when you use a paper filter, it removes 98% of the lipids from coffee and removes the caffeine carbiol. So you're losing two of the healthiest compounds from coffee if you use a paper filter. So use a still filter, use fine ground coffee, and try and make it about a 2.5 minute brew time. And that's how you're going to get the healthiest cup of coffee.
Okay. I also heard that a lot of the paper filters have got like plastics weaved into them as well. So
Yeah, they're
you cook the.
well, so you kind of avoid those things, and also the still filter is reusable, so it's better for the environment. So
Okay, okay. I've never even heard of a steel filter. I need to Google that in a second. Okay, so and just give me a rough idea of like if I want like a IKEA cup of coffee, and I've got the steel filter of how much. I've never known this. How many grams of like dried ground coffee should be going in that filter?
though 17 grams of ground coffee, which is about I think it's about 2 tablespoons. So yeah,
Mhm.
2 tablespoons, grams. But adjust it to your own taste. Like I know people who use less, like 14. I know people who use 21 grams. So depends how much caffeine you can handle. Because if you put 17 grams, you'll get about 200 milligrams of caffeine. So it depends how much caffeine you want or can handle.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Obviously, if you're going for the decaf, it's less important. You can make it pretty strong and not worry about that too much. Yeah.
Yeah, and decaf, like you said before, it does have some caffeine in, but only a few milligrams of
Hmm.
caffeine. Or
Hmm.
like a regular cup of coffee, if it's like a fresh roasted specialty grade coffee, is about 200 milligrams. Decaf, you're talking about 5 milligrams. So
Okay.
tiny bit left, but you know, you're not going to notice 5 milligrams.
No, no. Um, so we were away a couple of months ago, and my brother boiled the kettle for his instant coffee, I should say. And he didn't want to boil, he didn't want to tip it straight away. I was like, what are you doing? Because it burns the coffee if you do it straight after boiling. I was like, what? And I had heard something before about that, but forget the instant coffee for a second. Like, is there any like what when I'm boiling the kettle? Can you just tip it straight in the coffee? You got to wait a bit. What's going on there?
Pour it in 30 seconds off the boil.
Okay.
There is, so people talk about it scalding the beans and things. It kind of, there's no, I have researched this and there's no real tangible effect. Some say the boiling water can introduce some like negative, more bitter tasting compounds into the coffee. But from reading the research, it is really hard to find any research that actually supported anything other than a bit of an impact on the taste. So I think it's more of a taste thing, but we say 30 seconds after boil. Unless you in an AeroPress, you know, because like you said before, AeroPress is plastic, and you don't want to be putting boiling water into plastic. So then you use water that's more like 2 minutes off the boil.
Mhm.
So let it cool.
Even then, I'd be concerned now, just because I've seen so much evidence about hot plastics going into your testosterone systems and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I have a couple of AeroPresses, but I only use it when we're traveling or on holidays. So it's pretty much unbreakable, so that you can chuck
Really?
it in a pack and you can just use it out on a mountain top quite easily. So they're really useful for that. But on a day-to-day basis, I think they make a glass one now,
Do
but
they? I'd imagine they would. Yeah.
it's a lot more expensive though. So I haven't got.
Yeah. I'm probably more breakable. But okay, that's interesting. Okay, so don't worry too much about the heat. So not to like poo-poo over all the fast food coffee chains out there, other than the decaf, and the polyphenols, is there anything else we should be concerned about when we go to like a Starbucks or a Costa or something like that?
Yeah, I guess on both sides. So the chains tend to dark roast their coffee first of all. So so a Starbucks will want they'll want someone going into a Starbucks in the Philippines versus America versus London, wherever, and they'll want all of their coffee to taste exactly the same. Wherever they're buying that coffee from, whichever plantation, whichever country, they'll want the coffee to taste the same. And the only way to do that is by dark roasting the coffee. So that's why all these chains have a pretty dark roasted coffee. So it tastes the same. So you're tasting their roasting profile, not the beans, the origin of the beans. And the problem with that is coffee's polyphenols start in the highest concentration in its green bean form. They're at their highest at a light roasted coffee, and then as you roast it darker, they can lose up to 90% of their healthy compounds.
Hmm.
So so the test I mentioned before that had that range of 6 and 188 milligrams per cup, 6 milligrams, it was actually Starbucks that was at the bottom at 6 milligrams. So it's because they're dark roast coffee. So you're not getting the same level of health benefits. But there are also potential contaminants in coffee like molds and mycotoxins. And you know, if you are buying a poor quality coffee, then there's more of a risk of those things in it.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a danger with the dark roast? And the only reason I'm asking that is I know that people talk about like burning is cancer, carcinogenic. So that's something that, like, if you char your steak, for example, I know Dave Asprey has a real problem with charring meats. Is there anything linked with like dark roasting coffees?
Yeah, they are. There are certain compounds like I think they're called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons (PAH),
Very nice. I'm impressed you remember that.
which are introduced into dark roast coffees. I don't think it's a massive issue in coffee, but I think they are there, and people who are really strict in avoiding these things would probably want to avoid them.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some.
Mm. So just on caffeine and bedtime then. So people talk about like the half-life of caffeine and all this. Maybe you can demystify this a little bit for us. But my understanding is like the longer you have the gap between caffeine and bed, the better. Ideally, a minimum of 12 hours is kind of what I aim for, but try and do long. So I normally have a coffee at like 7 or 8, and that'll probably be my only caffeine of the day. So just give us a little flavor of like what's going on with half-life, what's going on with caffeine, how much does it disrupt sleep? When do you have your last coffee? Just, yeah, overview of that, please.
Yeah, it's a funny one because everyone's so different.
Mhm.
Everyone, it's down to there's two genes in your body which dictate how fast you metabolize caffeine and how fast we absorb the caffeine. We are all quite different, and the caffeine half-life, and people talk about 8 hours, some people talk about 4 hours, but there's a range between about 2 and 9 hours. But there's outliers outside of that even. So how fast you metabolize caffeine is very different, and we kind of most people have pre-selected or kind of like intuitively figured it out themselves. But for example, like my dad is 84 and he drinks coffee right up until when he goes to bed. And if he wakes up in the night, he goes downstairs, has a double espresso, then goes back to bed. And he's 84 and he's going strong and he swears it's down to the coffee. So, he just has naturally come to that himself and he sleeps like a log. However, personally, I can't drink coffee after about 1 o'clock. So I stop at 1 o'clock. And I know I can sleep really well. Well, the trackers I have, if I stop at 1 o'clock. So I'd say as a rule of thumb, most people should probably stop by about 12 or 1 o'clock, really, to be safe.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm half Italian, and they love a bloody espresso after dinner at night.
No, you tell them to stop, and there's just one answer.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it? But then, is it right that espresso has the lowest caffeine out of all the kind of different coffees because the water's pushed through so quickly?
Only if you have a single espresso. A single espresso would be half the amount. A double espresso is equivalent to like a mug of cafetiere coffee or an AeroPress or a steel dripper. So, a double espresso would be the equivalent. So
Have you? This is years ago. I just remember this now when I was at a work thing, and they had the best coffee machine. I don't know if it wasn't healthy, but it was really freaking tasty, and it was just really nice cappuccinos. And I think I had like 6 or 7. I think I had 6, and I started vomiting later that day. So I think I must have got like, is it you get some caffeine poisoning, right, if you have too much?
I mean, it could have also been the milk, whatever dodgy milk.
Probably. Yeah.
It was. I wonder what was. Yeah, I wonder if you're getting a cappuccino from a machine. I wonder. It's probably some kind of powdered milk plus emulsifiers, stabilizers. Who knows? So
okay, so it may not have been the coffee.
But yeah, it could have been the coffee. If you're the key with caffeine is don't stick to your dose and don't massively go above or below it.
Yeah.
If you're drinking I drink 2 cups of caffeinated coffee a day and 1 decaf. The 2 caffeinated coffees give me 400 milligrams of caffeine. So if I was to suddenly have 800 or 1,000 in a day, then I would have adverse effects. If I was to go from 400 to 0, I'd probably have adverse effects as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got your level that your body's habituated to, and don't drastically change that quickly.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm asking you this as the coffee guy, so I'm curious to get your answer on this. But they say everyone sees, Builder sees everything like a nail. It's got a hammer, yeah. And I see everything through the lens of a breath coach. So I'm like, you need to breathe through your nose and do all these proper things. I've noticed people cycle their caffeine, and sometimes I think Tim Ferriss will do this once a year. They'll take a month off, and they'll go completely caffeine free. What are your thoughts on that? Are there any benefits to that? Disadvantages to that?
So Dr. Rupy, who's our chief science officer, he has his own Doctor's Kitchen podcast and app. He has every January off caffeine, so he drinks decaf for January, a month a year. I've not read any research which actually says that it's needed or necessary. Honestly, I've had coffee every day for the last 4 or 5 years. And if I'd read any research to indicate that I should have a gap, then I would do. I just haven't read it. I don't think there's any harm in it. I think probably psychologically it's really good to be able to prove to yourself that you're not addicted to something. If that is a concern of yours, it doesn't particularly concern me that I might be addicted to coffee because I love it. So I think most people are just like, well, what's the point in trying to cut it back? I don't know. Yeah, there's no convincing evidence.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I've not heard any convincing evidence either. It's just one of those things where it's like, oh, a bit like a dopamine detox. Maybe you just need to give your systems, your adrenal systems, a bit of a rest every now and again, I guess.
Think so. I mean, if you're if you're a habituated coffee drinker and you drink coffee every day, it has no impact on my adrenals. It has no impact on anything, uh, from cortisol to my adrenals to anything. You know, honestly, habituated coffee drinkers, if you drink coffee every day and it's a good quality coffee, you have a healthy relationship with the coffee, then there is no issue with drinking it every day on your blow big up how big an issue it is, but it's really not. So
If you, I guess if you're drinking like a dark roast, shitty coffee from somewhere, and or instant decaf or whatever it is, it probably does make sense to have a break from that because you're not actually taking a break from the caffeine. It's from all the other crap that's in there. I even think about like the plastic cups these days, and like the plastic lids. And I saw this thing saying like, if you're drinking coffee out of a cup, then it's got a coating of plastic, and so you literally got like a plastic soup that you're drinking now because it's all being dissolved into it. And it's like,
I'd say, actually going, maybe retracting what I just said a little bit, I would say as long as you're drinking an organic coffee that's been fresh roasted, that you're grinding yourself, you don't have to grind it yourself actually. Fresh roasted coffee,
yeah,
um, and you're drinking it in a kind of relaxed way, in a kind of a parasympathetic, down-regulated way. Maybe like just take some time to even hand grind the coffee yourself. I love hand grinding the coffee. Add the ritual to bring the let's bring the ritual.
yeah,
Make coffee, hand grind it. Back in the day, people used to roast it. You go to Ethiopia, they'll roast it in front of you, and that adds to the ritual as well. But hand grind the coffee and then take the time to brew it. And while you're waiting 5 minutes for your cafetiere to brew, spend 5 minutes doing some deep breathing or something, or do a few stretches.
yeah.
Add that into your life. Like, it's a really good, easy way to build in some kind of like movement routine or breathwork routine. Just every day you make your coffee 2 or 3 times a day. In those 5 minutes, do a breathing exercise 5 minutes. It's like, so if we're all doing this, then coffee is not something that you'd need to be cycling in and out of, I think.
It's nice. I like your relationship. So I've got a NutriBullet, and I'm like, demand the shit out of that coffee. Now I'm just thinking, I'd love to, we were just talking about this the other day actually at breakfast. Like, we never clean that NutriBullet, that particular thing. So it's like I've got, because obviously it stinks of coffee. So I've got a specific blade and a cup that's always full of dried coffee, and we never wash it. So is there a problem in just having old dry coffee, do you think, sitting in that NutriBullet? You're probably going to say, yeah, right, it's going to be full of toxins and mold.
It could be, but I would say, first of all, grinding with a NutriBullet isn't great, isn't
Okay.
ideal, because the blade of like a blender like that would just smash the beans, so it causes like a really uneven surface area and a really uneven size of the coffee grounds. So you'll get some, if you look at it, you'll get some that are quite big grounds,
Yeah.
some that are really fine, and everything in between.
Mhm.
Well, coffee, depending the different sizes of grounds of coffee extract at different rates. So you want a really uniformly sized grind size. So that's why if you buy a more expensive coffee grinder, the more expensive you buy, the extra money is just getting you an even more uniformly sized coffee ground. So we've just got one. It's like 400 quid for this coffee grinder, but it's because it's so uniform. And that means that all the grinds that it extracts at exactly the same rate, and they extract the flavor compounds and the healthy compounds at the same rate. So
Mm.
if you're going to use a still dripper, for example, I said before, if you use a fine ground coffee in that still dripper, you're going to get 410 milligrams of polyphenols from that. But if you're grinding it in a NutriBullet, you have no idea what you're getting, because half of those grounds could be really big grinds, half could be small. You don't know how much caffeine you're going to get, how much polyphenols. So,
Mm.
but yeah, don't use the NutriBullet.
Okay, this is good. And do you wash your coffee grinder out, or do you just leave the old bits in there?
Well, so you don't wash a coffee grinder because it's really hard to dry it. So
Okay.
grinders are like conical burrs, and it's like a cup that sits inside a cup, and it kind of slowly
Right. Okay.
and if you washed it, it just would be so hard to dry it, and it probably
Okay.
get because of the
Okay. So it's okay to have a few crumbs in there, I guess is what I'm trying to. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Um. Okay. Last couple of questions for you. This has been very insightful. Any benefits to cold brew other than flavor?
um They say it's lower acidity, easier on the.
Okay.
Uh,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So I love cold brew. I'm kind of even now in winter. I have a cold brew on the go.
Hmm.
Big fan of cold brew. We've done testing on it. It doesn't the testing. It doesn't extract polyphenols especially well.
Okay.
Um, I think because with cold brew you use the coarse ground coffee in the cold brew. Okay, so the biggest thing that impacts how healthy a cup of coffee is really is how finely ground the coffee granules are. So in cold brew, you use quite a coarse ground coffee. And I think in the middle of those big coffee grinds, there's like polyphenols and caffeine probably and things locked in the middle that are just really impossible to access. So because it's not a fine ground coffee, it doesn't extract quite as much polyphenols. But you could just drink more or put more coffee in or whatever. But yeah, I'd say there's no additional health benefits to it.
Okay.
Being easier on your stomach.
Cool. Thoughts on butter coffee, yak tea, all that sort of stuff? Have you gone down that route at all? Fats and coffees?
I did. I spent a year starting every day with a bulletproof coffee and skipping breakfast. And when I was training for an Ironman, and I thought it was the only way I could start the day, and I thought it was the best fuel before I went on a run. And then it actually got to race day, and I tried to do the same on race day, and I tried to have a bulletproof coffee before the Ironman. And literally, like, because of the pre-race nerves, I just couldn't stomach the butter and all the fats, and it just made me feel so sick that it nearly ruined the whole race for me. And I was like, well, actually, if I can't race on the same fuel that I'm training on, then actually maybe it's not the best thing. And then I stopped having the bulletproof coffees and just start the day with a black coffee. And actually, my performance is exactly the same. I was getting no additional benefits from the butter and the MCT, or I think it was all coming from the caffeine.
That's
So
interesting. I had some of the best coffee I've ever had in my life came from Jordan, and if you've ever seen it, it's like they have a little copper cup, and they have like a fire, and on top of the fire is sand, and they put the copper cup in, and the coffee boils, and it gets really hot, and there's loads of like cinnamon and cardamom in there and stuff, and it's thick. It's like a sandy coffee. It's not the sand that's in there, but it's like have you ever come across any of those kind of Middle Eastern kind of coffees?
yeah, totally. We were in Morocco last year, and we had exactly the same where they're sitting in the sun. I think it's quite a traditional Turkish way of making coffee, and
Mm.
it's like this brass pot with a handle. And it's actually known as one of the healthiest ways to make coffee because you use a really seriously fine grind of coffee in them, even finer than if you're brewing an espresso. So it's really, and you boil the water up to boiling point. So really hot water, really fine ground coffee. So it's really efficient and it extracts some polyphenols. So it is very good for you.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Just that not everybody has boiling hot sand lying about.
That's
Not
it.
easy to make.
No, I remember it was like, this is delicious. I was only there for a couple of days, but I was like, it was delicious coffee, like all the cardamom in there and everything. Yeah.
It's got to help as well. Like,
Yes.
um, probably the best sources of polyphenols are spices, fresh spices. So if you're putting spices in, you're getting your supercharged coffee. So
Yeah. Oof. What's the difference between tea and coffee in terms of caffeine? My understanding is it's molecularly, again, I don't know what I'm talking about here. It sounds like it's a bit different molecularly of what I've heard, and molecularly, and it's like a harsher spike on caffeine, and it's like a softer, more mellow spike on tea. I feel that, but I don't know if there's any truth to that. Might be
I
subjective.
mean, there's a lot more caffeine in coffee versus tea. A lot,
Okay.
kind of in a cup of a fresh roast specialty grade coffee, you're going to get 200 milligrams of caffeine, give or take. Depending on how strong you brew it. How I brew it, it's 200 milligrams. A cup of tea is like 40 milligrams. So, you could have 5 teas to one coffee. Also, some teas, like green tea, has L-theanine in it as well. And that L-theanine can level out the effects of caffeine for a smoother caffeine hit. If you're someone who feels kind of anxious or jittery from caffeine in a 200 milligram cup of coffee, you could have a supplement, a pill of L-theanine with it as well. And that will help level it out for you. As a little hack for people who.
Nice. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of caffeine quantities, though, you'll get a lot of tea brands out there and a lot of people out there who are saying that, 30, 40, 20 milligrams of caffeine is the ideal amount to have, and that 200 milligrams would be too much. But actually, it's a load of rubbish. And they, weirdly, most people don't realize that to get the benefits from coffee or caffeine, you actually need way more than that, way more than you'd think. So the International Society of Sports Nutrition recommend 3 to 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilo of body weight, which for your average person, that's about 400 to 600 milligrams of caffeine. That's to get the performance benefits. So if you were about to start a race and you just had a cup of tea, then it's a tenth of what you need, maybe a 15th of what you'd need to get any tangible performance benefits. So even a cup of coffee at 200 milligrams is still half of what you need to get the minimum required for the performance benefits. And that's recommended by the ISSN. So
cool. So I've got a jiu-jitsu competition coming up this year. How early before the jiu-jitsu competition should I be having that much caffeine? Just before, hour before? What's good?
First of all, don't test it on competition.
Yeah.
In case it goes straight through. But it takes about 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes to metabolize caffeine in coffee. So you want to have that cup of coffee about 60 minutes to 90 minutes before the event. But then if you've tested before and you realize that 400 milligrams is a sweet spot for you. So when I do a big event, I'll have a cup of coffee, 200 milligrams an hour before. And then about 10 minutes before the event, I'll top up with some caffeine pills and get another 200 milligrams from that. And in a pill form, it gets into your system a lot faster. So then I'm getting 400 milligrams between the two. And then you go into the event and you're firing.
Nice. Okay. Is there any evidence on people say you shouldn't have coffee on an empty stomach? Or is it more about like the type of coffee, if you put like a shitty coffee in versus a good coffee? Or should we have some food in there before we have that first coffee of the day?
There's really mixed evidence here. And some people react worse than others. It depends on, how your stomach is. If people have stomach issues, I would say it can't hurt to not have coffee on an empty stomach. Like I'd say it's just an easy way to rule out something that could potentially be irritating your stomach. If you're someone who has no stomach issues and you're just happy, then there's no reason to change and not. So just listen to intuitively follow your own body and your own stomach and just do what feels right for your stomach. You will know if you drink coffee and your stomach feels bad and you have stomach issues, then you'll know. So
yeah, no, that's good. I really like your relationship with caffeine. I haven't really thought about it like that because generally it is a knock the coffee back as quick as you can and kind of crack on. There's a guy that I did some free diver training with a couple of years ago, and he's got the Guinness World Record. I had it for the longest breath hold. He did 10 minutes.
wow.
Okay. And this was years ago. It's like 12, 13 years ago. Anyway, we're in Corfu and we're doing yoga or doing breath holds in the water safely with him guiding us, all this sort of stuff. And afterwards, we'd be fasted the whole time. We wouldn't have anything, no alcohol the night before, no food when you're doing all the breath holds. Afterwards, though, we'd all have breakfast together. He ordered a coffee, and we're just chatting for like an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And I come back, and he's still got the same coffee in his hand. I was like, what's going on? He goes like, I just want to enjoy the flavor. I just have a nice. And I was like, yeah. It's like, 'cause I'm knocking like 2-3 coffees back in that time. So you've just made me think about that again. Like he was just having as much fun with that coffee and just enjoying it. It's quite nice.
And I know people are starting to recommend having factor in a gratitude practice into your coffee routine. So as you're drinking that coffee, if you're smelling the coffee and enjoying the taste of the coffee, just think for a second about all of the hard work that's gone into getting this, this brewed cup of caffeine water in your cup and back to the farm and the farmer and, the countries that it's come from and all of the effort that's gone in, all the processes, so all the people involved in the supply chain, and just appreciate how awesome it is. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Just have a conscious, healthy relationship with coffee and caffeine is what we're trying to advocate.
Yeah. I did a tea ceremony a couple of years ago, and that was very similar. We weren't allowed to drink it for ages. We were holding it, looking at it, sniffing it, doing all those things that you've just said, and eventually just take a little sip and leave it in your mouth, and just it was nice. I was like, again, I'm normally like a couple of espressos and crack on, so it was really nice to have that slow down. Do you know much about the relationship between caffeine and nicotine? My understanding is they're quite similar compounds, and there's similar benefits for the mind in different things.
I don't know much about nicotine, to be honest. No, I don't know. I probably would have to pass on that one.
Yeah, no, I just heard that there's people now that are taking nicotine like they would take caffeine, not drinking it, but they're having that because it's got a lot of similar benefits. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Smokers are way more likely to be coffee drinkers. And back in the day, like coffee used to get a bad rep. In the early research, like 50, 60 years ago, like, the early studies linked coffee to things like lung cancer and stuff. But it's because they didn't realize that actually way more smokers drink coffee. So there's these confounding variables, they call them. So there is something that I've read somewhere around caffeine enhancing the effects of nicotine, and that's why smokers love coffee so much. Don't quote me on that though.
No, no, that's. I mean, I was a smoker many, many years ago now, thankfully, and yeah, would love a good coffee in the morning. Long time ago, terrible as a breath coach that I used to smoke, but you go through that.
Last day, all these things were, of course, smoking isn't bad for you. We didn't think we didn't know it.
No, well, I kind of knew, yeah, but this was only like 25 years ago. Anyway, last question for you then. So what are some of the cognitive benefits of caffeine? Because I know there's different things out there. So like what does it do if you've got ADHD, for example? Does it make it worse? Does it make it better? Can you just give us a little flavor of the cognitive benefits of coffee and caffeine?
Yeah, I mean, caffeine has been linked to reduced risk of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. There's like the epidemiology is pretty convincing that caffeine in particular is supportive of brain health, long-term brain health, healthy aging of the brain. In terms of specific things like ADHD, I probably don't know enough about it to really comment on ADHD in coffee. But I know that caffeine is I'd say pretty convinced. It has some convincing science behind it being good for the brain. I've written various different blogs on this, and yeah, it's caffeine's very good for the brain.
Nice. Okay. Well, we're going to link to your blog. So anyone watching this now, they'll have the link down below. So they can...
So there's a guy out there, Dr. Amen, who does say that coffee. He claims on some podcasts that coffee is bad for the brain because it restricts the blood flow to the brain. So I've actually written a whole blog which is about, does coffee cause dementia and Alzheimer's, like he implies, and actually cite dozens of studies which show the opposite. And there's actually no research linking coffee to any negative effects of the brain. So,
does it do either or? Because not in terms of negativeness, but does caffeine have any effect on blood flow in a positive or a negative way? Is it a vasodilator, vasoconstrictor?
Yeah, so it can restrict blood flow in the brain briefly while you're drinking and for a short period afterwards. But actually, the argument is that if that was bad, then why do we see such a reduced risk of all these brain-related diseases in the epidemiology if it was a bad thing? So one theory is that, I don't know if you've come across the theory of hormesis, and basically hormesis it's not a theory, it's proven, but it's that small amounts of stress in the body mean the body responds and becomes stronger. So exercise, for example, is a stress on the body. Your body reacts by getting stronger. Weight training, you lift some weights and it tears the muscles in your body. It's a stress on the body, but you get stronger. It's the same with, certain types of breath work, ice baths, all these things, saunas, stress on the body. Potentially, caffeine has a similar effect in the brain. So caffeine vasoconstricts, might restrict blood flow in the brain very temporarily, but if it does, your brain reacts stronger, and in the long term, you have a much reduced risk of all sorts of brain diseases. So essentially, there's some hormesis at play.
Yes, there's something. This is more from the breathwork world, but I think it's called the baro reflex. And what it is, it's the constriction, it's the opening and closing of all the arteries. I think I'm getting this right. And there is a benefit in doing that. And so there's a benefit probably in that temporary constriction allows then a more of an opening, or the body having to balance that with an opening. Yeah. Wim Hof breathing is similar. Wim Hof breathing will constrict blood flow to the brain. So I wonder if there's a similar benefit afterwards. But,
definitely. And stress on the body isn't always a bad thing.
So no. I love a bit of sauna. Sauna's like one of my favorite stressors.
Cool. Years. So we live in Portugal, and we live in this like block of flats, and one of the biggest things we have going for us here is we have sauna. So every other day we're in the sauna, and I just love it. Yeah, it's just amazing.
You're making me hate you more and more. You started your day off on the beach, you've got your own sauna, you've got sunshine, and you've got a nice 400-pound coffee press. So it's been I'm very jealous. No, it's been awesome. Is there anything we haven't covered that you wanted to cover?
I'd just say people people think of coffee as the carrier. So there's a big trend of people adding things to coffee and just feeling the need to, add mushrooms or other adaptogens or whatever it is to coffee to then sell it, market it and sell it as this health product. But actually coffee on its own, there's over 20,000 studies published on coffee. Over 20,000 studies published. There is nothing about coffee we don't know. We know most things about coffee. And coffee now, there's no doctor or researcher on the planet who would argue that coffee is really good for you and has loads of health benefits.
Mm.
But then, if we just take the time to, to have the best quality coffee and then have a really good relationship with coffee, you don't need all these other fancy fads and supplements and things that there's no point in buying something just because some ancient traditional Mongolian culture used to consume this 1,000 years ago. So we should be adding it to our coffee. So it's just not needed, all of that. Just get good quality ingredients of the things you consume every day and cut out the noise, and you'll be a lot happier, and your bank balance will probably be a lot happier as well.
Yeah, yeah, so good. I interviewed a guy, I haven't released it yet, who has a supplement company here in the UK, and he has some wonderful sleep supplements. Anyway, he was saying, I was like, oh, what do you think about Athletic Greens? The AG1. He's like, well, you could spend £100 on multivit, or you could put that towards like a higher quality meat and vegetable. And I was like, oh, that's actually really good, actually. So kind of similar kind of vibe there, really. It's like if you're going to buy coffee, buy a better coffee, and don't worry about, yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Thank you. This has been so informative. It's going to completely revolutionize my coffee practice and my relationship. I'll need to get my wife off the instant decaf crap that we've got in the cupboard as well. So thank you, mate. Where can people find you if they want to know more? Where's the best place we can send them?
Yeah, so our website is exhalecoffee.com, and our Instagram is yourexhale. They're probably the places we're most active. So,
Beautiful. We'll put them down below. Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you everyone for watching. Take care, Alex.
yes, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Cheers, man. Thank you so much for sticking all the way through till the end. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Leave us a comment down below if you did. What's one thing that you learn from this chat? Because we can spend loads of time watching podcasts and then they just get forgotten about. If you take 2 seconds, you write down something you enjoyed or you found useful from this, it'll help somebody else, and it'll also help your mind remember it as well. Now, you are one of the rare few that stuck it through to the end, so I salute you. And I want to give you a couple of things. So down below this is a couple of links to free things. We've got some wonderful free resources, and there are a couple of paid things. So if you want to do some coaching or you want to join our mentorship, those links are down below. If you're just here for the podcast, then thank you so much for being here. Give us a like and a comment. And if you've enjoyed this, then YouTube thinks you'll like this video here. All right, see you soon. Cheers.